Okay, so like we've been doing before, let's start with the motivation and then we do a small presentation, then a break and question answer, and then a meditation. Let's begin by the motivation. So please take a posture that's comfortable for you. Sit for a while. And gently take the awareness to the body by going across, scanning the body from the top of the head, across the face, then down the throat. Relax the shoulders, keep the shoulders level. And go down the back. Down to the hips. And here begin to feel the sensation of the torso on the cushion or chair. Feel the weight of your body there. Contact points. And then down into the legs. Right down to the feet. If your feet are on the floor, like you're sitting on a chair, you can feel the pressure of your legs on the soles of your feet. Feel the contact points. Then coming back up from the feet, up the legs, the hips, the front of the body, go across the abdomen, the stomach, diaphragm, and chest. Try to do those kind of deep breaths. While you're breathing in, you're breathing into your belly. To expand, the chest expands. And then go across, up across the shoulders again and down the arms and into the hands. And then coming back up the arms, the shoulders, the back of the neck, back the top of the head. Then with that, slowly straighten up your spine. And then take the awareness to the breathing. You can begin by those deep breaths. Complete concentration, awareness on each part of the breath. And then from there you can take the awareness to kind of a smaller area, like you can stay on the abdomen itself, or you can stay at the point where the air is touching the body the first time, the air around the nostrils. Tie the mind to that area. And then from there, generate that motivation, thinking about why you're here, what's brought you to the session. Bring to mind the first noble truth. I think we're trying to use methods, find methods to relieve all this difficulty that we're in. Try to identify where all this difficulty comes from. See, it can be appeased, can be removed. We're trying to find methods that will fit our minds, suit our minds. So with that mind of the creative mind, we imagine the Buddha, the one who taught all these methods, in front of us, a living being, based on statues, paintings we've seen. Construct an actual living being in front of us. Feel the presence first of the Buddha, and then with the mind, as best as you can, on a lotus, a sun disk, then a moon disk. He's seated cross-legged. Here represents that mind completely purified and completely realized. Let the mind go towards wishing for that kind of mind that we also have the potential to reach. So we go for a resultant refuge to culminate all those realized states of minds, having patience, loving kindness, compassion, patience, joyous effort. We're going to use the methods he taught to protect our minds. So gently take your mind towards a refuge, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So not just for ourselves, for our own peace, we imagine around us the closest people in our lives who've shown us great affection, kindness, support. So whether it's your parents, the main caregivers in your life, your family, friends. Seeing they're also looking for answers, they're also in difficulty, are quite often confused about what are real methods for happiness and create more difficulty for themselves. Then let the mind expand to include more and more beings, realizing how we've been in cyclic existence so many lifetimes and met all these beings so many times, and they're also, in essence, family, friends. So now I can join in that wish to become this kind of enlightened being, not just for our own peace, but to benefit all of these beings. Okay, so with that motivation, let's start the session. Listen, interact. If you need to ask questions, there'll be a small slot after the short presentation. Okay. But anyway, if you need to stop me anytime, you can stop me. So now on the fourth close placement of mindfulness, so it's called phenomena. So in the Sanskrit tradition, it's kind of made a little bit more simple in that the main thing we kind of put on mindfulness now is to look at the mental factors. It's similar to what we did before in terms of mind, the third one, but here we're not going to kind of the mind itself, kind of that neutral quality of the mind, the main mind, which had the mental factors coming and going inside it, but the mind itself stays neutral. It's impermanent, it's changing second by second. But here we're looking more at the mental factors that are coming and going depending on causes, conditions. Excuse me. So again, like we took going towards refuge, we have to identify where the difficulty, suffering comes from, right? And they're mostly coming from the afflictions. So we have to kind of identify them. So some of you maybe studied the module on mind and mental factors. We go through the afflictions, we try and identify them, see definitions of them, etc., and their functions, etc. So it's kind of an important topic because we have to really pinpoint what are the major mental factors that are making us problems in our lives. And sometimes we don't see it, or sometimes we're actually very good friends with it because it seems such an ingrained mind. It's so strong in us. We feel like it's us, it's part of us, and we don't even see how it lies to us. It takes some time. It takes some time to actually identify them. So once you identify them and see where they're coming from, see their nature, see how they really make us blind to reality, and see how every time it comes up, we don't actually see the person, the situation, how it actually is. We exaggerate their importance in our life, whether it's in a negative way, like anger or malice or attachment. Makes us feel very good, and we feel like we need that person, that situation in our lives to be happy, and we're desperate, to have that next to us, and we don't have it. We're a bit of a mess. So we have to identify it, and then we have to put the antidotes. Yeah, the antidotes which abandon those mental factors. We have to again identify. So that's why this. If you get some of you get a chance to do the module on mind and mental factors, it's very, very good. Yeah, I'm sure it's taught in different here in the center in different ways. It's kind of good to see how patience can be the main antidote for anger. So sometimes we say, well, when we're actually angry, someone says, "Be patient." It's pretty difficult because you've already lost it. So you can't be patient, right? So patience comes when you're already patient. There's no room for anger. So that's why it's kind of the main antidote. But by being patient in a very stable way, there's no room for anger to come. So that's how it acts as an antidote to anger or malice, etc. So these are the things we have to adopt, the mental factors we adopt. So the mindfulness, in this close place to mindfulness in the Sanskrit tradition, is going more onto that, more onto the antidotes. And the main antidote, of course, is that wisdom that cuts through the idea of self and the me and the idea of mine. So some ways of explaining self or my or me is self grasping the self of persons. And the mind sometimes is related to the grasping self of phenomena. We see the objects around us that we utilize as actually being there from almost like an intrinsic from its own side, without relying on causes, conditions, without relying on parts, without relying on the mind labeling that valid basis, whatever it is. So what happens is, because of the imprints of ignorance, we see all this phenomena around us as really being there. Then we believe in the appearance, and then we start tripping up. Then the afflictions come, right? But again, the afflictions come mostly because there's a me, and it's seeing things out there. So me existing here, independent of the aggregates, the body and mind, and there's somebody, some situation out there without relying on causes, conditions, etc. And then these two becomes like a flame for the fire, and we get so caught up in this reality, right? So this close placement of mindfulness is going a little bit more into the real truth. That's why it's if you look at the first chart I gave you in that first, or I think I sent you in the second session, we're looking at the four close places of mindfulness. Brings you into the four truths. Look at seeing the body as it is. We see it as suffering. Seeing feelings. So here the feelings are sensations like pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Leads to clinging, and then leads to the origin of suffering. Because then having the sensations, we have this kind of a strong clinging to having pleasant sensations, a strong clinging not to have unpleasant sensations, that leads to the afflictions arising. Then we see the close placements of mindfulness. We see how when we look at, take all the afflictions apart, see the mind in the conventional nature, the changing second by second, seeing its ultimate nature, doesn't exist inherently, it's not some permanent phenomena, it's not some static phenomena. We have the idea of the mind can be cleared of all these afflictions, and all the positive emotions can be actually increased because they're based on a value basis, and that leads to the idea of a true cessation, the ending of all the a mind empty, void of all the negative emotions is completely possible. So that leads to the idea of true cessation, the third noble truth. And the fourth close place of mindfulness, looking at phenomena. So here that the mental afflictions can be removed. There's an antidote for it. The antidote, the real antidote. So we have to go like into the full-blown antidote, is that wisdom realizing emptiness, absence of things ourselves, phenomena around us, existing in a way that appears to us seems to be independent of causes, conditions, etc. So that leads to the idea of true path, the method that leads us to what depends, complete liberation or enlightenment if you go in the Mahayana context, or one's own liberation if you're going towards the kind of the Pali Theravada context. So what's the difference there? The motivation. To when our wisdom, same wisdom, exactly the same wisdom, which is needed for the individual liberation or the Mahayana enlightenment. If the Mahayana enlightenment is backed up with this compassion, strong compassion, we call it bodhicitta. So bodhicitta, again, two aspects, two aspirations, right? Wishing for enlightenment to help all sentient beings. That's why almost, everything we do, we try and mix with the motivation of bodhicitta. We try and imagine around us beings who are in exactly the same position as us. They're caught in samsara, they're caught in afflictions, they don't understand how they're caught. Many of them create more and more causes to be back in samsara. So it's a desperate situation, but we have to get real that we are where we are. So we can do a little bit by, changing our minds. You can already see, it's a very practical thing. We can see how when we have more compassion, more loving kindness, more patience, first we feel good. We feel much more at ease, more calm. And then when we interact with people, they're helped because we're not agitating them in any way. We don't increase their afflictions. So they also become peaceful indirectly. So in that way, we see in a very practical way when we have less of the afflictions coming up in our minds, we have more of the antidotes, and as they increase by mental training, and we become more and more patient in more and more situations with more and more difficult people in our lives, we actually become peaceful, and we don't have, like I think Lama Zopa's famous quote is, when there's no anger, there's no enemy, right? So we're patient. No matter how much people are trying to disturb us, we're quite stable. We understand the whole situation. We can forgive. We can see where they're coming from. It's their afflictions, it's not them. We don't identify them. That person is doing that to me. It's their afflictions. They control like a puppet, etc. Then it's more easy to get that distance. So we can see, so when we start to use these antidotes, we get a much more peaceful state of mind, and we live in that state of mind. We're so calm. We deal with other people very calmly. So it's a win-win situation. So imagine the more we train in that mind, in such an extent that we become that kind of being that we visualize in front of us, the enlightened being. That's exactly what he did, and that's what many practitioners are still doing. They use the methods the Buddha gave, and they start to use it, and they see the benefits. And that's so when you see that, and you see how we get at least an inferential understanding that that is a state is possible. We see a change in ourselves by using the antidotes. We see if we can use it more, we can get to a state like that. It become, you see the statue behind me. It's just like an example of what we can become. It's a role model of what we can become. And same with the taras on this side. So it's like every image here represents what we ourselves can become. That's why we have altars like this when we come in, to inspire us, to remind us of what the potential can be increased to become that kind of state. So when we have that understanding, we can become like that kind of purified, realized mind. From there, we can really be of utmost benefit to all these beings around us. Depending again on the karma they have with us, we can help them. That's why, I mean, hopefully, a lot of you can see the more you practice, the more you listen, the more you put it into your daily life, you you benefit first, then you benefit others. But how wonderful if you can really benefit others, if you can see really what's going on in their minds, what's their kind of main traumas, what's their main afflictions, what triggers them to follow those habits, etc. If you can see more clearly, so we do that because of the enlightened mind has so much more power, so much more clairvoyance. They can see what's going on and then give the right advice to that particular person. See, in our states, it's very difficult. We have a little bit of understanding what's going on, but we don't actually know what's going on with that person. So, although we may know our methods for ourselves, those methods may not be the right ones for that person. It's like giving food to somebody who's very hungry, but they have a certain palate or taste. So you can't give anything to that person. You have to give something that benefits that person where they are in that life at that time. So that's kind of the Buddha's capacity to have that power to be able to give that kind of teaching, the correct time, the correct words, and it's understood. So that kind of capacity is amazing. So sometimes it feels like it's discouraging because we haven't got that. We're trying to help, but actually sometimes we make a mess because we can't see, because we haven't got that power. We think what we're doing is quite good. Our motivation might be good, but when we give the words, it just gets misunderstood or misplaced. So we haven't quite got the perfect methods yet. So that's where we can aim for. So that wisdom that understands that selflessness of kind of the me that's not within the body, not within the feelings, not within the mind, not within any of the mental factors. And we understand we're just a collection. We understand. Just look at the first close placement of mindfulness. Of course, looking at the impurity of the body, etc. But just look. There's no body as such anyway. It's all made of parts. Even the smallest particles you cannot find. Yeah, within all this agglomeration of particles put together. Of course, the gross aspect, yes, it's impure. It's nothing actually there that we are attached to. But you go a bit further, there is no body itself anyway. Right? So the same with the feelings. The second subject we've made here. If you look at the unpleasant sensation, pleasant sensation that comes due to contact, and then due to karma, we see that contact with that person, that situation brings a pleasant sensation. Contact with such a different thing brings unpleasant, etc. Even that, if we look at the actual unpleasant sensation, where is it in the moments of it? It also cannot be found. Depending on all causes and conditions, a sensation comes up, right? And there's no. But sometimes we think, well, I am feeling that. It's me feeling. So sensation is me. But again, we have to analyze how can the sensation, which has got a mental factor, be me, like essentially me? Because when we had the idea of self for me, it's based on body and the mind, and sensation is part of mind, right? So how can me just be mind? So again, you have to analyze. So this close placement of mindfulness goes a little bit further. We can have insight coming in. There's no real sense of self here in the body, like a me in the physical thing. There's no me in the mental factor of sensation. Then the mind itself, sometimes we think, okay, clear up all those emotions, and then look at the mind itself, like we looked at last time. The mind being like the sky without the clouds. So I go behind all the clouds, look at the space like sky. You think that's me. Essentially, that's me. It's my nature. But again, how can that be? That means that people, when people base the idea of you on the body and the mind, not just mind, right? You can't be only mind. And also the idea of the self, what we have is it's like, again, like I said last time, it's like it seems like one unit, one entity, one subject. You can't find one subject in parts, because the mind has parts, right? It's a continuity. Even now, I'm stay in the present moment. Just by saying stay in the present moment, the moment's already gone. Same with the mind. The mind's continually changing. So how can there be a me in that continuity, right? So we get a little bit further. We see there's no actual self in the mind. But we're looking at the mind, looking at the conventional nature, how it's impermanent, changes second by second. We see the mind is ultimate nature, doesn't have any intrinsic existence to it. There's no like inherent nature of mind. We see, where is such a me in that phenomena? Then we go to the fourth subject of the phenomena itself. See, we can look at that, even the mental factors, which are always coming and going, not static. You can't say, I'm an angry person, or I'm compassionate, because those are also coming and going, right? So even the mental factors, positive or negative, also changing second by second, right? We loop, but then we focus more on the antidotes, strengthen them, increase them to diminish the negative ones, because we have to see that the negative ones are not based on valid reasoning. They're always wrong. The anger, attachment, pride, doubt, etc., all based on wrong kind of thinking. We put correct thinking, which are valid minds, like the antidotes, and we increase their power. So we have to taste this. You see, if we don't taste it, we don't have any trust in it. So we have to start by looking at the mental emotions which are the strongest in us, and try to put the antidotes, even though it's difficult because they seem so habitual. We have to try. We have to understand that they are bringing us down, causing us a lot of pain, and try to put the antidote little by little until they reduce. When we see them reduce, we don't react in the same way we used to react. We get a bit more confidence that the antidote works, and you put the antidote more and more often, more and more situations, and it gets strengthened to such an extent that these affliction that we have, or the emotions that we had that plagued us, doesn't have so much strength anymore. So even more conviction. Then we actually understand what the Buddha was saying was very true, and that's probably how he got where he got to. So we have this conviction and trust. We put more and more force into it. You get more trust, and that becomes to such an extent. We see even the antidote of wisdom that cuts through the idea of self, which brings all the root of all the afflictions can be removed. So we put more effort into that wisdom. Also, for some of us, it's difficult because we're not at that level, but we can use it time to time in certain situations. We see that situation as fantastic as it looks, or that situation as bad as it looks. You know? And when we deconstruct it, we see we made that up, that inherently bad situation, person, etc. And it came from the idea of me, not liking this situation, because it brought up a sensation. That sensation of feeling unpleasant sensation looked inherently like bad, has to, and it came because of that cause out there. So that was a cause for this sensation. We don't see it as a condition. We see it as a cause. He, she, that situation, that event, made me upset. So we kind of eliminate or destroy or ignore or avoid that person, situation, etc. And then we have to see it's not like that. It's subjective. It happens from our mind, and we can actually deconstruct it. So we get a bit more faith in the wisdom aspect working. So that's and we get a little bit more trust that we can do it ourselves. There's nobody out there doing it. We have to bring the work ourselves. So it gives that encouragement. It gives that confidence. It's not. No, so don't try to confuse that with pride. When we start to use the antidotes, we say, well, I am more compassionate. I am more kind now. It's actually a good thing because you get more encouraged to use those positive states of mind, right? And then, especially with wisdom, when you start the wisdom and you start to use it more, okay, when you have that less grasping at me, and also mind, also the self-centered mind, which isn't technically an affliction as such, but for us, in our ordinary sense, it is very much connected to the self-grasping. The self-centered is more like me, and then my happiness now above others' happiness. So we see that's also not really a valid mind. We can actually say, why is that? Why is that so important? The meanness. Why should I have everything I want right now? So then I have the understanding of others, giving what others think, what others feel. It's like, let's go of this kind of self-centered mind. There's other caring mind that brings more compassion, empathy, etc. So that comes from our minds. We have to do it from ourselves. We see how we have to understand how this self centered mind is actually like glue, bringing us more. It looks like it's protecting us, but actually brings us more difficulty. We understand it, we have to see there's an antidote to it, which is caring for others, the other centered mind, and go in that path. But it takes time, so we have to start from where we are, right? Slowly start to do the work. So that's on the, from the Sanskrit side, it's like looking at the afflictions, the negative emotions, seeing they're to be abandoned, and the positive ones to be adopted. From the Pali tradition, it goes a little bit further by looking at the five aggregates, for example. So some of you may know what the five aggregates are. It's how the Buddha divided up the idea of a me, a self, which normally we consider is either the body or the mind. So the first aggregate is the body. We see the body. It's a bit like looking at the close placement of mindfulness on the body. We look. So where is this idea of a me, a self in the body? If it's not that, is it in the feeling? The second one. Is it in discrimination, which is the mind thinking, oh, you make choices. This is black. This is white. This is square. This is a circle. That discrimination mind. We think that's me doing that, or we think it's me that's observing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. It's like a sense of me in the mind, that the main minds of seeing, hearing, seeing, touching, etc. Then we think, if it's not that, if it's not the body, yourself is not the body, self is not the sensation, the self, the I is not in the main minds, not in the discrimination, then it must be in all the other mental factors, like, oh, I'm happy, I'm compassionate, I'm patient, I am, so you think, you identify with that particular mental factor, emotion. I am patient, I am compassionate. You think that's also not true, because the self is based on the body and the mind. It can't be just in the mind. So you have to slowly deconstruct that idea as well. The person is somewhere in one of these emotions. So again, that mindfulness leads to the idea of there is no real self here that we imagine to be here. Again, we don't go to the extreme of then there's no self at all, because that goes into the idea of voidness and nihilism. There is a self, but not in the way it appears to us. It's a tricky thing. It's a really fine line. That was a Rinpoche. I think I told you last time. Sometimes it's almost like it's not there. It's such a fine distinction. It's almost like you slip into the idea of there's no self at all, and not even a phenomenon at all, almost like a dream. Like when you wake up from a dream, all the things that seem so real in the dream can't be touched, tasted, smelled anymore, all gone. So it seems like that, when you go into extreme of that. So that's why Rinpoche always brings us back. In some of his meditations, he brings us back into conventional truth, a conventional way of seeing things as existing based on causes, conditions, parts, and the mind labeling those valid basis on what they are. And then things exist on that as a dependent arising, like arising dependently. That's how things exist. So they work with that, because otherwise we go into the absence of it. So yes, the Pali tradition looks at that. The five aggregates looks at kind of the six sources. Six sources are sometimes what we almost like the phenomena outside, the objects that trigger us, the objects of senses that bring sensation, because that contact with them brings sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, etc. It brings the afflictions, etc. So you think they're somehow out there existing inherently as pleasant, unpleasant. But again, we see with mindfulness, it's not like that. It's all relative based on how we interact with them. So they go a little bit further in the subjects, what they put their mindfulness on phenomena on, but it's very similar. I mean, it's just looking at everything around us and seeing they don't have any real nature to it, proper nature to it, like any inherent nature to it that makes us hold on to it, grasp onto it. It's really, really there, existing from our own side as pleasant, unpleasant, etc. So in that way, we go into the idea when you see that selflessness, the mind starts to understand and deconstruct the way things appear. We go into the idea of emptiness. That's the real antidote, and that's the real true path that gets us out of this bewilderment, this kind of samsara that we put ourselves into. So that way, it's kind of a very practical thing. The four close placements of mindfulness. We use it. If we use it daily, little by little, in a practical way, see how we hold on to our body, attach to our body as it is. But if we use that mindfulness, how it's not like that, and then ultimately there is no body itself. Same with the feelings. We try and look at the feelings, how when we contact the objects around us, the senses, we have sensations of pleasant, unpleasant. We go beyond that. You see, there's no real inherent existent pleasant sensation there that brings the attachment, etc. Then look at the mind. Yeah, the mind itself, conventionally, it's changing second by second. Ultimately, it doesn't have any real inherent existence there. So that way we get to the idea a little bit closer in a practical way of the four truths. We see as an ending of suffering as possible. We see how suffering comes. We see the origin. We see there's a method to get rid of all of this. So slowly, we have to use from where we are, we have to use steps to go a little bit further. So I think it's a very, like when I read the Thupten Chodron, Dalai Lama's book, I think Thupten Chodron quite often says it's not, we don't use it enough in our, of course, the whole Lamrim is there in the four close placements of mindfulness, but it's not stressed in our tradition so much. So I thought that's why I chose this subject when Losam Dun asked me, what do you think? So I thought this would be something useful for a lot of people. And it's kind of the basics. When you go to the Theravada, it's kind of the basic practice for them. But in our kind of Tibetan system, we're not emphasizing it so much, So I thought it'd be nice to introduce this in a way that's palatable, it's kind of accessible. And of course, if you look at it closely, the whole Lamrim is in that, it's just set out differently. So I hope that helped. Anyway, that's our presentation finished for the moment. We'll take a little break and we'll come back. And if you have questions, we can do questions. I'll try to give answers. And then we'll go into a meditation. Okay? Let's take a small break.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody has any queries, doubts, questions? Okay, clear. So let's maybe start the meditation. Is that okay, Michael? All right. Okay, let's go. Okay, let's do a brief meditation on the four close placements then. Okay. So again, please take that posture that's comfortable for you. The main thing is to keep the back upright, straight. And then from there, again, take the awareness very gently to the breathing. Start with the kind of deep breaths, bring the air right down to the abdomen, breathing out gently. Relax the eyes, relax the face, relax the shoulders with each breath. And then from there, take the awareness to the body itself. So go through what you've listened to about the conventional nature of the body, seeing as it is, all its parts, looking at the cause of the body, coming from appearance, a substantial cause, looking at the nature of the body, it's by nature kind of impure, whatever part you take and put in front of you, from the hair, the skin, the eyes, the flesh, the bones, separate it all out. Each one doesn't have anything actually attractive about it. And then move on to the ultimate nature of the body, even the parts. If you can visualize creatively in front of you, doesn't actually have any real nature to it. And the body is a mere label on all the parts put together in a certain way, and functions, and call it a body. So try to look at the conventional nature and then look at the ultimate nature. And moving on, we look at again the posture, bringing awareness to the posture. We see some areas in our body maybe have unpleasant sensation arising due to contact of the body with the cushion or chair. Or maybe there's a pleasant sensation, for example, with your hands, it's a tingling energy, or there's just a mental sensation of being at peace, being calm. And seeing how those sensations can lead to a clinging, a craving to be free from that unpleasant feeling, and a craving, clinging to have more of the pleasant feeling. We see the origin of the afflictions. We see how the afflictions arise. It leads to karma. It eventually leads to origin of the more difficulty, suffering in our lives. So you move from your own sensations right now in your body. Think how you had, how you reacted when you had pleasant sensations, unpleasant sensations, and see how our mind reacts. You can try to go to a recent event when that happened. And then go on further to analyze the ultimate nature of the sensations arising. For example, right now you may look at a pleasant, unpleasant sensation and try to feel where is it, what is it actually, the actual nature of it. And these sensations, how are they arising? Where are they arising? In the mind itself. So you look at the mind, the conventional aspect of the mind. Even for a millisecond, it's not static, constantly flowing like a river. And just like the river or sea water is kind of pure, clear, without any sediment, so bring to mind the meditation of being like the sky or like an ocean where all these things are floating in it, but you are not it. You're not the mind as well. It's just a clear and knowing aspect of the mind. But if you try to pinpoint that clear and knowing nature of the mind, also difficult to actually find an independent, clear, knowing nature of the mind itself. So because these afflictions are not like in one nature with this aspect of mind, and the afflictions are totally based on wrong reasoning, wrong conceptions, they have no valid basis, they have no power. They have no power when we put right, correct reasonings, correct minds. So remember how we've tasted this before? We have actually done this work. We've seen how when we're patient, being able to bear difficulties, then there is no room for impatience or irritability. Or we have loving kindness to certain people. We start with one or two people. We know it's difficult then to have irritability towards them. And when we use wisdom, a fixed conception of that person, situation anymore. try to see the conventional nature of the antidotes we're trying to adopt, how they have that power to reduce the afflictions we're trying to abandon. We see how the hindrances like sensual desire, ill will, doubt, regret, lethargy and laxity all have their antidotes. And we've tasted, we know how the antidotes have power over them. But going beyond that to see the antidotes themselves that we use, if we actually try to find them in their nature, also cannot be found. They function, they exist, but looking for a true nature of the antidotes cannot be found under kind of ultimate analysis. To look for it, difficult to pinpoint. But still, they work, they help us. So with that, strengthen the confidence in ourselves. Like if we want less suffering, less confusion in our lives, we have to use these antidotes. Probably people around us who can inspire us, like the Sangha, the local Sangha, your friends who are in the Dharma already, who've been using these antidotes. But in fact, in the end, it's ourselves who have to do the work. So with that, we have to kind of determine to make that choice, to make the antidotes the priority in our lives, if we want less difficulty. Then again, we put our awareness to the Buddha in front, imagining as clearly as we can, seeing how that person did the work that we're trying to do in the fullest possible way. Thinking also of how many lives he practiced to culminate his work into that pure, realized mind. Try to develop that appreciation. So with that comes more trust in this being, the Buddha, the Dharma, the methods he taught, and the Sangha. So he's actually also the Sangha in that he has what we call the true cessation and true paths. Then from there we generate this altruistic wish by looking at the sentient beings around us, starting with our close ones, whether it's our parents, relatives, friends, slowly increasing that mind, thinking every being has been like that many times. And then many are on very dangerous paths, not knowing how much suffering they will have to experience due to not knowing the causes of real happiness. So just like we will try to help our main caregivers, whether it's our parents or whoever we have appreciation for in this life, when they're in difficulty, have that same concern for every living being equally. Try to make it as real as possible, thinking of real people here. It's not generally all sentient beings. You actually pinpoint, name, put faces to the beings. The neutral ones you see in the streets, work every day, but you haven't got a close connection with. The difficult people in your lives right now. And then from there, let's dedicate out to all of these beings, wherever they are in different places, going through various physical ailments, sicknesses, mental difficulties, worries, fears, psychological problems. So again, starting with the people that you feel so closely connected with, and then try to expand that mind. Just like they have problems, so have all these other beings you haven't met yet in this life, you don't know in this life, and all beings in different realms. So how wonderful if they would also be able to meet teachings that break through these conceptions, the wrong conceptions. May they have the right conditions to practice perfect external, internal conditions. And may they be able to practice up till reaching enlightenment. How wonderful that would be. When we do the four measurables that some of you may be familiar with, we can wish that may there be fear of suffering and the causes of suffering, so all these wrong conceptions. May they have happiness and the cause of happiness, so all the antidotes in the fullest way. May they abide in equanimity without being pulled here and there to aversion and attachment. Have a calm, equal mind. And whatever happiness they have, from temporary happiness of good health, good mental stability, financial situations, etc., may they never lose that. Rejoice in whatever happiness they have in this and future lives, up to enlightenment. And then we can think of ourselves. Would also like to be enlightened. For all these sentient beings, we dedicate for our own path to go well. Whatever obstacles we have, we find the right solutions, be it by using the mind training, taking difficulties on the path, purifying our negativities, accumulating merit. May we also be able to meet our perfect valid teachers, have precious human lives, life to life, and then finally culminate in that enlightened mind to protect all these beings. We dedicate for the teachers like the Dalai Lama to have long and healthy lives, to be able to share that knowledge that he has, the realizations, inspire us. For teachers like Lama Zopa Rinpoche to quickly come back from the Dharmakaya, the enlightened state of mind. So in the mind we cannot see, so they have to take a form. So may they manifest quickly back in this realm, wherever is needed to help sentient beings. And all the other teachers in whichever traditions, whether they're teaching ethics, renunciation, compassion, wisdom. How wonderful that is. The real cause of happiness is being generated. So wherever the mind of bodhicitta that has arisen, arise and grow, may that not arisen, may that not arise and grow, may that arisen never decline but increase more and more. The mind of compassion bodhicitta. And then rejoice in your own efforts where you are, making effort to listen and practice and study, make a change in your life. It's incredible you have the chance. Think of the precious human life that you met the teachings and using the teachings in your life, and try to determine to do more as life is slipping by. Try to do more every day. So again, we dedicate especially, I think somebody had some grace, I can't remember. One of you was looking after somebody who's got dementia. We can dedicate that person. I can't remember her name.
Bess was taking care of her. She had dementia.
All right, that's right. Yeah, so we dedicate for that, and whichever people you have, you're dedicating for, especially you can dedicate. Think of them. Dedicate the merit of his final session. Yeah, so we can actually dedicate for in a good way. And all the caregivers, right now going through a lot of difficulty. Nurses, doctors, psychologists, everyone trying to bring some happiness, some appeasement, appease other people's difficulties. How wonderful that is! Doing that with such a great and big heart, patience. Amazing. Okay, so thank you very much for joining our session. Hope something was clear. Okay. Good night, everybody. Oh, good. Yeah, good night to you. Good night to you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank you, Venerable.
everybody.
Thank you very
Okay.